Good day, my name is Kumi, and today we'll be talking about how access to education is associated to Ghana's economic condition. In this presentation, we will look out for the research questions I used, methods, results, and also discussions which came about after the research. Yes, so this topic has been done by a number of researchers, and from two research I looked at, this review they made a conclusion that investment in education is very vital for sustaining economic growth and poverty reduction, and it was confirmed by the next research literature review because they examined the relationship between education and income inequality, and they were able to identify why it's important to provide access to education to people since it gives people higher opportunities and incomes. So, looking at why I decided to go for this course topic, I have a profound interest in education because I believe it's one of the channels Africa and also Ghana can use in improving. And looking at why I think it's important for everyone to know, especially this topic, is because Ghana has a lot of investment in education, and knowing its returns in the long run will be very beneficial. Looking at the two research questions I used in this research, the first question is access to education associated to Ghana's economic condition? And the second question was also, is starvation associated to Ghana's economic condition? Looking at the research methods I used, and especially the sampling side, the survey used was obtained from people above 17 years in the rural and urban areas of Ghana and Kenya. The dataset was obtained from Afrobarometer. So this data was collected in 2019 using the simple random sampling approach to find out how many people were educated, what they thought about the present economic condition, and how often they went without eating. From the data collected, I analyzed and found out that it needed to be cleaned, and from how I cleaned it, the sampling reduced, and in the subset, that's how you find the new sampling I came about. Looking more at the questions which was asked and responses, certain questions had direct answers which helped me to go ahead to analyze. So questions like have you been to school before had responses which were yes and no, which was fine for me to continue analyzing. But also questions also like country's present economic condition came up with multiple responses which had to be broken down. So responses like very bad, fairly bad, bad, and so on was now categorized into two, which was good and bad, and that helped me to analyze the data well. So in inferential testing, I decided to use a character test of independence because I was dealing with two categorical variables, which required me to use this testing method. Right on the inferential test, I came up with a null hypothesis which was that there is no association between access to education and economic condition, and also an alternative hypothesis which was also that there is a relationship between access to education and economic condition. Now, looking at our results obtained from this research, we saw an inverse relationship between economic hardship and education access because whenever access to education increased in Ghana and in Kenya, we saw a reciprocal reduction in economic hardship. And this also can be seen in diagram 2, where we compared economic hardship to starvation because we saw that whenever economic hardship was falling was due to the rise in starvation in both countries. Now, using the inferential test we did, we actually arrived at a p-value of 0.008415 for Ghana, which helped us to reject H naught, which caused a type 1 error. But for Kenya, we saw that there was a type 2 error because we couldn't reject the H naught, because we had 0.906 for p-value. Looking at the results, we found out that economic hardship had an inverse relationship with access to education and starvation. So I would like to highlight some of the limitations and also suggest some good practices which have helped to improve this research. So one of the first limitation was that the data used was observational. That means that it didn't cover enough scope which could have helped to make the research have a very strong result. Another limitation was that the focus which affect on factors which affect economic conditions was limited. So the factors which actually cause an economy to have a very high boom or not have a high boom were all not counted in this research, and therefore would not really have a strong basis to make decisions. Moving on, another limitation too was that the literature reviews used were not very up to date, and therefore making decisions from the result here would have certain implications, because if, let's say, it was up to date, maybe we could have had a different outcome. Another limitation too was that the countries analyzed were just Ghana and Kenya, so it would have been more better for us to use like more than two countries, and that could have influenced our results to make it more accurate. So these are the limitations and some of the suggestions I think this would have helped make this research better. So looking at how to looking at if this research was is good enough to inform policies, yes, because we can see that from the research we could establish that there's a good outcome if Ghana invests more in education. So yes, it is. Okay, so with this said, we can say that education access has a very high return for countries like Ghana.